Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Meseches CHULLIN Daf Kuf Chav Ches. So we are holding in Kuf Chav Zayin with Beis at the two dots, which are 11 lines from the bottom. We go back to the Mishnah. Nishchata behema b'chulu. We spoke about this dangling limb on the animal, and then the animal experienced shchita. Mishnah says the shchita spares this entity of becoming Eiver min hachai. It's not Eiver min hachai that was detached from a live being during its lifetime. It wasn't. It was technically attached. In fact, when the animal experienced shchita, that shchita covers this entity as well. So this entity benefits from the shchita, and it will be spared from becoming Eiver min hachai. Rather, it's considered like food. With the Rabbanon, we don't eat it. It's too close to the real thing, but it's considered like food, and it can become tamei. And the question is, does it require hechsher, which is the standard procedure, standard preparatory step that food must experience before it becomes tamei, come into contact with the 7 primary liquids, water, wine, etc. So what happens to this piece of flesh, this limb, after the shechita of the animal? Mishnah says no separate hechsher is required for this piece, because huchsheru b'domeo, says the Mishnah on the top line of the Amid here. Tivir Rab Meir. Well, the blood of the shechita applies hechsher to the animal at large, and likewise to this piece. Rab Shimon Amir lo huchsheru. No, the hechsher of the rest of the animal did not benefit this limb, and it needs its own independent hechsher to open the door for its own tumah. Now, what's the machlekes about? We're going to have no less than 6 ways to understand the machlekes. But Ma'ika Miflegi, what's the machlekes about? Again, Tanakama, Rab Meir says hechsher of the animal applies to this entity as well. Rab Shimon says it doesn't. What's the machlekes? Ma'ika Miflegi. I'm a rabbah. The question is like this: Behema nasis yad le'ever kamiflegi. Can the behema constitute a yad, a handle, an extension for this limb? So just like yad can serve as a conduit to bring tumah in and out, likewise it can bring hechsher in and out. So even though the blood didn't actually touch the aver, but the hechsher that occurs with the behema transfers to the aver as well, as per the concept of yad. The aver serves as a conduit to bring hechsher into the aver. The thing is that the aver is a secondary element here. He's a tafel. He's the less significant element of the two things. So that's the question: can a behemoth serve as a yad for something which is insignificant relative to the behemoth? Can the ikar be a yad for a tafel? That's the question. The behemoth nasis yad le'ever kamiflik. That's the machlekes. Mar savar. Reb Shimon says no way. Ein behemoth nasis yad le'ever. The behemoth, which is primary, cannot serve as an accessory for this little aver, and therefore it does not have hechsher. Umar Savar Meir disagrees. He says, yep, behemoth nasis yad le'ever. Behemoth can serve as a conduit to bring the hechsher over to the aver. That's one pshat. Abai Omar, pshat number 2. These two things are still technically connected. It's hanging by a strand. So if you pick up the behemoth, the flesh comes along with it. It's somewhat connected, but if you would try to move the behemoth by picking up the flesh, it would totally detached. In a situation where if you would pick up the smaller of the two, the bigger, larger section would not come along, would just detach. Is that considered connected or not? It's a one-way connection, so to speak. Harihu kamayu. Kamifleki. So that's the machlekes. Mar Savar. Ramir said it's still one and the same entity. They're connected somewhat, and the hechsher spreads throughout. Mar Savar. Even though when he lifts the small one, the big piece just detaches. He's still considered connected, because as long as he comes along with the big piece. Mar Savar. Reb Shimon says no. He's not considered one and the same. In which case, the hechsher on the behemoth does not impact the limb. And this explanation was adopted by Rabbi Yochanan as well. But Rabbi Yochanan Savar, he also had this approach to the machlekes. The machlekes is regarding this very point. How do I know? The Rabbi Yochanan Rami. Rabbi Yochanan had a contradiction. He presented an apparent stira between our Rab Meir who says that even though the large piece does not come along with the small piece, it's still considered connected, versus a different Rameir, where he seems to say that it is not connected. Rami de Rameir, ad Rameir, mi amar Rameir. Is that so that Rameir holds? It's one and the same, it's connected, it's considered one entity. Eiches bekata. It's still considered connected. Raminu, here comes a kasha from a Mishnah, from a Brisa, Maseches Uktzin. Eichel shenifras. Say a loaf of bread, which is truma, and it was sliced for the most part. It's sliced like we do by Hamaitzi, right? During the weekday, we slice it almost to the bottom, so it's still somewhat connected. Shenifras, it was sliced, but Mu'ur b'miktzah is still somewhat connected. Now, a fellow who's a Tful Yom, he immersed in the mikveh, but he's still waiting for the completion of that purification process, waiting for the sunset. He's mostly tired, but he still has elements of tumah. If he comes into contact with truma, it becomes pasul. So what happens if he touches one side of this split loaf? Rameir Omer, return to the next page. Rameir Omer. Here's the test. If when you lift the smaller of the two pieces, the other one comes along, it's one and the same entity. Hariyu kamayu. And therefore, when the Tful Yom touches one side, the whole thing becomes effective. But otherwise, if it doesn't come along with the small piece, the two separate entities, one is unaffected by the other. It's a direct contradiction to our Mishnah, where he seems to say that even though the animal will not get dragged along with the limb, regarding hechsher, it's all one and the same. We're stuck. Apparently Rameir changed his opinion. Says the Gemara. So bottom line, you see clearly Rabbi Yechanan's understanding of the discussion now in Mishnah revolves around this very question, as we had proposed. Ask the Gemara holder, what's the problem? You're comparing hechsher to Tful Yom. Umay kushi, what's the kasha? Dilma shanigli Rameir. May Rameir would draw a distinction between the two things, being Tful Yom l'shar tumas. Tful Yom is not such a severe, intense tumah. So maybe there is room to be lenient, that his tumah doesn't spread over to the other side in this type of situation, but otherwise, regarding other matters, other tumahs, it would. There goes our contradiction. No, but Tanya, we have Rebbe who explains clearly, there's no difference. Rebbe Aimer echad Tful Yom, echad shar tumah, that according to Rabbi Meir, there's no difference between this tumah and that tumah. So back to the question. Well, but then the Rebbe l'shanel, maybe Rabbi Meir's understanding, maybe Rebbe's understanding of Rabbi Meir was in fact that there's no difference, but our Tana of our Mishnah held there is a difference. According to our Tana's understanding of Rabbi Meir, there would be a room to differentiate between Tful Yom, which is lenient, versus other concepts of other tumah and other matters of hechsher, where it's different. Rabbi Yashios, he says, you're right. Hachi amar Rabbi Yechanan. So exactly Rabbi Yechanan meant to say. According to Rabbi's understanding of Rabbi Meir's shita, then in fact there is no room to differentiate between this matter and other matters. So now we're stuck with a contradiction between our Mishnah, where he says that it's still connected, and the other Mishnah, where he says it's not connected. You have to say there was a change of position. Okay, back to our Mishnah, where the animal experienced hechsher, and the question is, does that hechsher benefit the limb as well? Here comes a third explanation, and the machlekes. Rabbi Meir says it does have hechsher, Rabbi Shimon says it doesn't, Rav Amar. B'yesh yad l'tumah, we know that yad serves by tumah, can serve as a conductor, a conduit to bring in tumah, to bring out tumah from the other item. What about for hechsher purposes? Does yad apply to hechsher? Perhaps only for tumah is there a concept of yad, but not regarding hechsher. That is what the machlekes is about. It's a conceptual machlekes. In general, is there a concept of yad bringing in hechsher from one side to the other? Mar savar, yes, only for tumah, not for hechsher. Mar savar yesh yad l'tumah v'inad l'hechsher. That's Reb Shimon's opinion. So despite the hechsher that applied to the animal, there's no hechsher on the limb, because yad does not serve for hechsher. Omar savar, Tanakama says yes. Yesh yad l'tumah l'hechsher, just like yad serves in a tumah capacity, also for hechsher. Hence, The limb had hechsher. Fourth pshat, Rav Papa Amar. You see, Rashi explains, for this limb to be reclassified as food, you have to have intent. I'm going to feed it to the guy. Now, it happened out of order. First, the shechita happened, which makes hechsher, and then he turned it into food. Can it work that way? Can it work out of sequence? Or perhaps it has to follow a very strict regimen. First, it has to be food, and then complete the food with hechsher. Because the hechsher is sort of a completion process on food. But here it happened in the reverse, just the opposite. First it had hechsher, and then he turned it into food. Does that work? That's the machlekes. Rav Papa Amar b'hechsher, in a case where hechsher occurred prior to machshava, which turned into food, kamifli. That's the point of machlekes. Does it work or not? The sanya. As we found this discussion elsewhere. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda quotes Rabbi Akiva. Kachaya Rabbi Akiva Shein. Rabbi Akiva will teach us. Chelev, shchuta, bakfarim, tzarech machshava. Fats of a shechted animal, out in the villages where they have enough, ample supply of meat, they don't need these fat. They don't typically eat fat. Tzarech machshava, you have to designate it as food in order for it to attain food status. But vein tzarech hechsher, skip the hechsher. Why? Shekvar huksha b'shchita, because the shchita process already accomplished hechsher, despite having occurred prior to rendering it as food. And that was my question to Rabbi Akiva. How? Amarti lefanav. So I presented to him, L'matan Rabbeinu, Rabbi, haven't you taught us ocean, these greenery, these vegetables, these bitter shalaktan, which had been picked. Typically, it's not eaten by a human. So he picked them, rinsed them off for animal feed. Animal feed doesn't have food status yet. But then, he diverted it as human food. V'nimlach alein la'adam. You had to change it. If I decide I'm going to feed it to another. So now it becomes food. What about hechsher? It already had the wetness, but that happened prior to becoming food. Tzrichos hechsher sheni. You taught us that you need another hechsher. First you need food, and then the hechsher can apply. So the same should be with the fat. Although it had the shechita, which typically makes hechsher, but that was prior to becoming food. V'chazar Rekiva. Rekiva changed his mind. The Yeshenik Rabbi Yehuda. And he reverted to Rabbi Yehuda's position. It has to go in order. First become food, and then have hechsher. So this very discussion is the point of contention in our Mishnah. Initially, Rabbi Akiva says, either way, right? And then he changed his mind. It has to follow a very specific sequence. Mar Savala Kamikara, so Rameir held like the initial position of Rabbi Akiva, even backwards work. So in our case there was shchita, which makes hechsher, and later on, he designated it as food. You know, that limb. Umar Saval Kachazor, Shimon held like the final version of Rabbi Akiva. It has to be done in sequence, which in this case it wasn't, because he only designated this dangling limb after the hechsher. Rav Acha ben Ravika Amar, here comes pshat number 5 in Machlekes. So the blood during the shechita splattered on this aver, but it was wiped away between one siman and the other. While he was doing the shechita, through the two tubes, between one and the other, the blood was wiped off this aver. So basically the blood was not present at the conclusion of the shechita process. Now we know that only blood of shechita has the ability to be machshir, not just wound blood. It's not called dam chalalim. So here there was blood, but it wasn't yet technically a full shechita at that point. How do we classify that blood? That's the kamifli, that's machlekes. Mar Savar, Rameir says, what do you mean? Of course it's shechita blood. Shechita starts at the beginning of the cutting process. Mar Savar yeshna shechita. The shechita process applies from the beginning to the end. It's a continuous shechita process. And this blood that's splattered during that process, dam shechita, is considered dam shechita and can be machshir that aver. Umar Savar, Shimon disagrees. He says, shechita only happens at the conclusion of the act. Right? And this blood that splattered during the process and was not present at the end to be stamped as dam shechita is merely blood from a wound. Doesn't have the ability to be machshir. Pshat number 6. He says, look, of course, the concept of yad, serving as a conduit, works for hechsher as it does for shchita as well, as it does for tumah, right? So the concept of yad can theoretically be used, be employed to bring over the hechsher to the aver. Or we can say it's one and the same, right? It's still connected, because even though the animal doesn't come along with it, but as long as the aver comes along with the animal, etc., etc. That's not the issue. Rather, what is the issue? There was blood from the shechita on this, that landed on this aver. Rameir says, yeah, so the blood of the shechita, that's the machshir. So we're good. Reb Shimon says, no. It's not the blood of the shechita that makes the hechsher, it's the shechita experience. It's the transformative experience of shechita which turns a live animal into food material. It's such a profound, transformative experience that the food is now considered completed without any need for any additional steps like hechsher, which is typically required to complete the food making process. It's such a food item. It doesn't need hechsher anymore. It's totally available for tumah. Rashi says a lashon. Since the shechita renders it food regarding permissibility, it turns a live animal which is forbidden into permissible food. It renders it fully food regarding tumah as well, which doesn't require any hechsher. That's good for the rest of the animal, but the limb, which Rashi says it's still usher for us to eat. Apparently, the Rabbanon. In any case, we don't eat it. So the shechita experience cannot really make it into food. Rather, if you want to designate it for a guy and feed it to him and turn it into food, fine. But then you need a new hechsher, a proper hechsher, by way of contact with liquid. So the shechita, which typically works in lieu of hechsher, in this case, which is not permitting it for consumption, will not work in that capacity. You need a proper hechsher to make it open for tumah. Okay, so back to the Mishnah, we have a aver dangling off an animal, which now experienced shechita. Does the aver need hechsher for it to be mekabel tumah? Rameir says it's good to go. Reb Shimon says it needs a new hechsher. My 6 ways to explain the machlekas. Okay, one was whether the behemoth can serve as a yad. The other question was whether the two elements are considered connected. The other pshat was, can the hechsher work out of order? The other pshat is, the blood that splattered during the shechita, does it qualify as dam shechita? And the next pshat was regarding the actual shechita experience. With Reb Shimon, in this case, it can't really serve as a machshir. There's another pshat, which was that maybe yad only works for tumah and not for hechsher. Continues the Gemara. Boy Rabbi, here comes an interesting question. Let's backtrack a minute to the Mishnah. We have this dangling entity on this live animal, and the animal's still alive. Now the aver, the dangling entity, became wet, so it's hechsher, no question there. And now tumah arrives. But the tumah only touched the animal, the live animal, which is typically immune to tumah. Live being doesn't become tumah except for Yisrael, right? A yid, the live yid, but otherwise, a goy, an animal, there's no tumah. But the aver, which has been designated as food, is considered food, but it's on this live entity. And the tumah only made contact with the live entity, with the rest of the animal, which is immune to tumah. So it in itself is not going to be tummy, but can it serve as a yad, as a conduit to bring the tumah over to the aver? On the one hand, you would say, yeah, why not? On the other hand, you can argue and say, well, an animal is immune to tumah. He doesn't relate to tumah. The tumah can't even travel through him, can't use him as a conduit. Interesting shayla. The live animal, during its lifetime, can serve as a yad, as a conduit to import tumah to the aver. Dangling from it, take it, leave it unresolved. There comes a series of similar questions regarding one entity serving as a conduit for the other. Amar Abai, Hari Amr. We know the halacha is kishus. So the squash or nut of atzitz, which was planted in this flower pot without any holes, so it's completely detached from the ground, and can be mekabel tumah, right? Something growing in the ground cannot be mekabel tumah, but this one could, because it's in a closed flower. Vigdila, biyatzis, chutz la'atzis. Okay, it's growing, it's steiging, it's prospering, it's actually growing beyond the perimeter of the otzitz. Tahira. So the part that's sticking out, which is now drawing sustenance from the environment, from the ground around, is considered like growing off the ground, and it's immune to tumah. And likewise, everything within it as well. The whole thing is now considered connected to the ground. Oh, Reb Shimon, why? It should be a split entity. What basis do we have to just spare the whole thing of tumah? I understand the part that's sticking out. Ella, rather, hatame b'tumah. So the part that's inside has tumah. Vatar b'tarasa. The part sticking out, okay, has tahara. So now we have a split entity once again. And the question is, can the external part, the Torah part, serve as a yad to bring tumah into the internal area? One side be a yad for the other. Take it with your own. Resolved. Another question. We know a person bows, serves as an idol, considers the chatzi delas to be avodah zarah. So it's a pumpkin, only half of it, the right half, he forbade, right? Asr makes it asr, to the point where Rashi says that it becomes asr b'hano. Can't have any benefit from it. It's like avodah zarah. And Rashi brings the shita of Reb Shimon is that only something which you can have benefit from has a food status. But something which is asr b'hano, you can't eat it or even feed it to a guy, loses its food status. So now you have a split pumpkin. On one side you have food, on the other side you have non-food. Same question, can one serve as a conduit to the other? But Rabbi Yirmiyah, we turn to take Omer Papa, another question. We have a halacha yichor shel te'ena, a branch of a fig tree shenivshach, which was mostly detached, but still hanging by a hair, by its peel, by its bark. So what happens to the fruit on that branch? Rabbi Yehuda, he says, well, the branch is still technically connected. Connected is free of tumah. Well, it depends. Im yachol lichyos, if you can theoretically reattach it and it can reconnect, then yeah, I consider it connected to the ground, and the fruit is torah from any tumah, because as you explained, something growing in the ground is not going to become tumah. Vim lav, but otherwise, it's considered detached tumah, and the fruit is susceptible to tumah. Now, boy Rav Papa, I have a question to Rav Papa. Let's say off that branch breaks off another branch. Okay, so we have 1, 2, and 3. We have the actual tree. Branch number 1 can still reconnect, roy lichyos, so anything on it is still considered tar and connected. From that branch comes number 3, which is halachically severed. It can't reconnect to number 2. So number 2 is tahar, still attached to the ground. Number 3 is detached. Can number 2 serve as a conduit for number 3? Mao, take, leave it unresolved. Here comes one final question. Amar Bzeira. This is regarding a house with a nega. Amar Bzeira. Hari Amar, we know, Evan Shabazavis. So you have 2 neighbors, and there's a large stone in the corner, meaning between the 2 houses. One side is facing this house, the other side is facing the other room. So what happens to this jumbo stone? So Reuven, who discovered a neg on his side of the stone, so he has to remove that stone. This is Rashi says after the first week. He locked up the house. A week later, it's still there. He's got to slide out that stone. How much of it? Only his side, or even the neighbor's side? That's kula. He has to remove the entire stone. Rashi says, well, the pasuk speaks about an Evan, the way it is, regardless of size, regardless of how deep it goes. So his neighbor will lose that stone from his wall. But let's say it gets more intense. The nega stubbornly, sticks around and comes back, and now we have to demolish the house. When he demolishes, it's limited to his side. He only has to break off his side, and he leaves over the other side of the stone on the other side. So basically this stone now has a split status, right? One side is tummy, one is not. But Reb Zera, same question. We know the side that's tummy is very tummy. It's tummy, even oil, anything in the same roof. So does that tumah travel through the other side, to transport tumah over to the friend's house. Okay, so we have a series of cases of split entities. The question is, can the Torah entity serve as a yan for the other side? Teku, just as in the previous questions, in this question as well, we leave it Teku unresolved. And by the way, the Rebbe in Ched used to say Teku is an acronym. Taf Yud Kafav. Tishbi, right? Al Yoah Tishbi, Al Yoah Navi, when he comes, he tarates, kushyois, v'boyes, he'll resolve all our questions, our uncertainties. But later on, it was noted that Teku is really an Aramaic word. Teku means to stand. Teku b'duchtei, to let it stand. That's what it means, let it stand. Until further clarification. Continues the Gemara, Mesa ha-behema. Now we get to the third scenario where the behema actually died with this dangling arm. So the Mishnah concludes that in fact this Eiver HaMedodol, this dangling entity, it's not considered as though he died, that it experienced the death experience with the behema together, because as explained, the behema, as it enters the dying process, so to speak, dying experience, it weakens and weakens progressively as it advances into that experience. Now this dangling limb, which has already been almost completely detached, so its state of life, so to speak, has been so diminished to the point that as soon as the animal's life force starts going down, starts decreasing, that affects a full and complete detachment and a termination of that minuscule life connection, so to speak, between the dangling limb and the animal. So ultimately the Eiver is not considered to have actually experienced Misa, death of the animal. Rather, it's considered as though it shed it, like the animal shed this Eiver a moment before the animal experienced Misa. Ultimately, the Eiver is now Eiver ben Achai. It's treated like a limb of a live animal, as though it was removed during its lifetime, not part of a nevela, part of a dead animal. So the Mishnah makes a point of saying that this dangling limb is now not considered Eiver nevela, part of a dead animal. Rather, it's Eiver ben Achai. Now you'll ask, what's the difference? Either way, it gives off tumah, pretty much an equal tumah. Eiver ben Achai, as well as Eiver ben Nevela, give off tumah through maga, through masa. So what's the difference? Meisa behema, ask the Gemara, my yikos, what is the difference between Bain, whether you treat it like an Eiver ben Achai, which gives off tumah, or you treat it like Eiver shel Nevela, which gives off tumah? Says the Gemara, there's one difference. You see, unlike a nevela, or even a piece of meat, kazayis of the basar nevela is matami, by Eiver ben Achai it's not so. Only a full entity, a full Eiver entity, which is comprised of bones, sinews, we'll see later what exactly is required to make it an Eiver, but ultimately it has to be an Eiver. It has to be a limb, which is like a microcosm of the animal, like a mini animal. But just flesh, clump of basar off a live animal does not have tumah. It's forbidden, you can't eat it, but doesn't have tumah. Likewise, a piece of flesh off this Eiver doesn't need to have tumah. So that's the difference. You treat it like an Eiver from nevela, the whole thing is tummy, whether in its Eiver form, in its bundle form, or even the basar itself, as opposed to Eiver ben Achai, which is only matame as a Eiver. Says the Gemara, the difference between the two is basar ha-perish mimenu. The basar which is clipped off from it, Eiver behema. The ilu basar ha-perish Eiver ben Achai, because a piece of flesh off the Eiver ben Achai has no tumah limitam, but that chunk of flesh detached from the Eiver nevela, Eiver ben Nevela, is metami. Okay, speaking about Eiver Menachai being Metami, how do we know? Where's the source for that? Eiver Menachai de Metami, how do we even know there's Tumah on Eiver Menachai? Micro, where's the pasuk? Amar Vida Mara, V'chiyamas Min HaBehema, the animal dies, it's an Avela, gives off Tumah, and we add another element, Min HaBehema. Not only the full animal, even part of the animal, even a limb of the animal. Eiver Menachai has Tumah, just like an Avela. Ask the Gemara, but that pasuk is needed for something else. It's needed for the other halacha from the same person. Some say it was an abraisim, as isatana. What do we learn from min habehema? Sometimes you can have an animal which appears to have nevela elements to it, but it's really tahar. Miktsas behema matama. Sometimes a behema which dies has tumah, but sometimes not. The miktsas behema ain't matama. Meaning, what are you talking about? You have an animal which had a treifa status, had a severe or critical injury, and then you shechted it. This is very similar to an avela. It was half dead to begin with, but since you shechted it, you spared it from becoming an avela. It has no tumah. And that's learned from mina behema. Only at times, sometimes, it has tumah, and sometimes something which is reminiscent of an avela does not have tumah. An animal which was a treifa and had shechita done to it. So bottom line, it's needed for that pasuk, for that drasha. It's unavailable to teach us tumas eiver menachai. Answer: Imkain, if it's only for that, lichtav rachmana, the pasuk would say mi behema. Some behema has nevela, some doesn't. Why does it say min habehema? Min habehema shmam natarti, to teach us both points. To exclude a treifa that had shechita from becoming tamei. On the other hand, not only is a full animal considered an avela if it dies, even part of the animal, or an aver taken from a chai, also has tumah. If so, ihachi, if you're including even parts, afilu basar nami, what about a piece of flesh as well? Which a bit earlier we had excluded from the tumah of aver nachai. How do we know? It's part of an animal. Afilu basar nami. No, like that, you can't suggest that. The side you have a brisa, which establishes the rules and the parameters. All constitutes aver nachai. The side yochel yehi basar aperish menachai tomei. Perhaps even a chunk of flesh off the animal is tomei tamaloymar b'chiyomas min habehema, which is the pasuk of aver menachai, which relates to misa. That's the defining criterion of what constitutes aver menachai. Ma misa she'ena oiseh chalipin. What defines misa? Irreparable, irreversible. It can't regrow. It's dead, right? Likewise, af kol she'eino yo'oseh chalipin. Likewise, only something which has no ability to regrow, to regenerate, has this tumah of aver menachai, as opposed to a piece of flesh which can regrow and recover. But an aver, missing limb, does not regrow. Hence, we know that only an aver, a full limb, as small as it could be even a finger, has tumas aver menachai, but not basar. That is the shita of divrei Rabbi Yossi. Some add Rabbi Yossi Haglili. Okay. Rabbi Kiva Omer, it goes a step further. He says that we compare the detached section to the behema himself. After all, that's how the pasuk describes it, min habehema. So it has to be similar in its features, in its content, to a behema. Rabbi Kiva Omer, behema, we compare it to behema. Ma behema, what quantifies a behema? What defines a behema? Gidibat samas, sinews, bones. Av kol gidibat samas, likewise, only a detached portion, which is comprised of gidibat samas, which has sinews and bones, qualifies as aver menachai. Regarding the tumah of aver menachai, Rebbe takes it a step further. It must have three elements that are found in a behema. Rebbe Omer behema, we compare it to behema. Ma behema bas or gidmat samas, just like the full animal is comprised of flesh, sinews, and bones. Likewise, the aver menachai, which is like a mini animal, needs to have those three elements to qualify. Af kol basar gidmat samas. Who have three shittas? Only something which does not regenerate, only with Gidim Vatsamas, or according to Rebbe, Basar v'Gidim Vatsamas. They sound pretty similar. My Ika, is there any difference? Halachic difference. Bein Rebbe, the Rebbe Kiva, between Rebbe and Rebbe Kiva. Yep. Ika b'nai Arkuva. Arkuva is the lowest section of the leg of the animal, which has bone, but it has sinew, so it qualifies according to Rabbi Akiva, but it's lacking flesh. Doesn't qualify according to Rebbe. Next, Bein Rebbe Kiva the Risak Lili, between Rebbe Kiva and Risak Lili, any difference there? Ma'ika benayu. Says the Gemara, yep, there is a difference. Amra Papa, Ika benayu, Amra Papa, Kulya v'nivs fasayim. The kidney or the lips, which will not regrow once detached, so it qualifies according to Rebbe Lili, but it's lacking Gidim Vatsamas. It doesn't qualify according to Rabbi Yossi. Interestingly, the same exact discussion with the same exact opinions are presented in the next brayso regarding an Eiver Menachai from a sheretz, from a creature. What does it require to qualify? The Chalipin regenerating condition, Gidim Vatsamas, Basa, what's going on? And the Gemara later will ask, what's the point of repeating it if it's the same exact principle? And the Gemara will explain why we need it discussed in both contexts. We have the same discussion by the Shvatzim, Kai Gavna, similar discussion. What about a piece of flesh detaching from a live creature? Is that tummy as well? No, when they die. So we learn from here that the Eiver Menachai has tumah if it is something which can be described as misa, comparable to misa. Ma misa she'ena isa chalipin, just like death cannot be reversed. Af kol she'ena isa chalipin, likewise, this detached element from a sheretz which has tumah has to be something which cannot regrow and regenerate. She'ena isa chalipin. That is the Rebbe Saglili, that's his opinion, as before. Rebbe Kiva Eimer, we compare it to the sheretz. Ma sheretz gidim batzames, av kol gidim batzames. Just like the sheretz is comprised of gidim batzames, likewise this detached element which has tumah needs to have those elements as well. Rabbi Eimer, all three. Sheretz, we compare it to the actual sheretz. Ma sheretz basar, v'gidim batzames. Just like the sheretz is comprised of three elements: flesh, bones, and sinews. Av kol basar v'gidim batzames. Likewise, only one that has those three elements will have a tumah of Eiver Menachai of a sheretz. Once again, what will be the difference between the opinions? Bein Rebbe, who says we need three elements, the Rekiva, who says only two. The difference is Al-Kruva, the bottom section of the leg, which only has 2 out of 3. Between Rekiva and Rekiva, what's the difference? Once again, the Kulya, the kidney, the and the lips, which cannot recover, but all it has is flesh. According to Rekiva, it counts, but not so according to Rekiva. Now, why do we need an exact replication of the same discussion by Behema and then by Sheretz? Etzricha, they're both needed. You cannot learn one from the other. Why? Di Ashmin and Behema. Had we only discussed this concept by Behema, that unless the Eiver qualifies with the proper criteria, it will have Tumah, otherwise not. I would say, you know why? Just a plain piece of flesh, a chunk of basar off the live animal is not going to give off tumah. Because a behema, in a way, has a disadvantage vis-a-vis a sheretz which is metame, even a minuscule lentil-sized piece of a sheretz is metame, as opposed to a behema, which doesn't give off tumah, unless it has a kazayis. So in a way, you can say he's disadvantaged. And therefore, he has this leniency as well. Aval sheretz to metame b'kadasha, but a sheretz, which even a teeny, small, minuscule, lentil-sized portion of the sheretz gives off tumah. So perhaps because of its more intense tumah, perhaps just a chunk of meat would give off tumah as an Eiver Menachai. So therefore, we learn otherwise. On the other hand, v'yashmina on the sheretz, had we only discussed this concept by the sheretz, or the basar on its own is not metame mechayim mishum d'lo metame b'masa, because it also has a disadvantage vis-a-vis a behema. A behema is metame by way of touching, by way of carrying it, but a sheretz doesn't have tumas masa. And perhaps, likewise, loy mitame mechaim. The basar is not mitame, unless it's a full aver. Aval behema de mitame b'masa, as opposed to behema, which gives off tumah by way of just carrying it, which is an indirect association. Ema to tame mechaim, perhaps because of that severity. Even a chunk of meat off the live animals mitame tzricha. That's why we discuss it in both cases to tell you that whether it's a behema or an aver or a sheretz, only an aver menachai, which qualifies as such, based on those three definitions, will give off tumah, but otherwise not. Okay, so in conclusion, we related to the Mishnah, which featured an animal with a dangling, either a limb or a piece of flesh. So in the first case of the Mishnah, the animal was still alive. In the second case, which was the beginning of our daf today, nishchata, the animal had shchita done to it, in which case the aver now is considered covered by the shchita. It's no longer aver menachai. So it's like regular food, and it needs hechsher to become tamei. And the question was whether the shchita experience per se provided hechsher for the limb or not. We had multiple ways of explaining that. Machlekes, whether or not it happens. And that took us into a whole discussion regarding a split entity, part of which is susceptible to tumah, part is not. Could one part become a conduit to serve as a conductor to bring tumah into the susceptible part? A series of questions. Teiku. Then we had the last story of the Mishnah where the animal actually died, in which case this aver is halachically considered to have detached, separated before death. Therefore, it's not considered aver min hanavela, only aver min achai. What is the difference between the two? Both have tumah. The answer is by min achai it needs to be an aver. But if it's nevela, then even basar is tamei as well. Okay, all the best to you and atzlacha, Rav.